We're going to teach you the keys to improving vertical jump and change of direction in elite level basketball players, and we're going to start right now. I'm Dan Miller, Olympic strength coach, and I've coached at the Olympics in 2021. I'm about to head to Paris to coach at my second Olympics. I've coached at nearly a dozen world championships, and I help coaches and athletes develop plans to become state champions, to become national champions, All-Americans, and get to that professional level. And what we're gonna go into today is going to be something that we can apply directly to the world of sports performance. We are looking at improving agility and improving the way that we function in an open skilled sport. So we're gonna break down this paper, okay, that's gonna give us some of the real cool secrets around what we need to look for as a strength coach and what we need to develop. This is a pretty cool paper where we're looking at specifically testing athletes with a squat jump, so we're already in position in like a quarter squat position to then jump, a counter movement jump, a hang clean, a shuttle test, and even a bench press. And then we're going to be looking at, with these specific athletes, things like their BMI. Now, the interesting part with this specific paper is that when we're looking at this, we have athletes, okay? So if we get into the methods section right here, the players had a minimum of 12 years experience and 4 years at the elite level. All the participants trained 6 times a week, twice a day for a duration of 2 hours per session. So a lot of information here. A lot of these elite level players are playing a lot, they're practicing a lot, they're training a lot, 11 to 12 sessions every single week. And these players were out of Uruguay. Some of the other aspects that I want to look at when I'm breaking down a paper is that I want to look through procedures. Okay, so we're looking at a couple different procedures. We're looking at the tests like the yo-yo test. So this would be like pretty good indicator of VO2 max for these athletes, along with those things like vertical jump, body composition, bench press, and hang clean. And they even get into some real specific stuff here. So I want to try and highlight this here. When we're looking at how well that they went through this, they didn't want these players using any types of stimulants, okay, here. So they try to say, hey, stay away from yerba mate, stay away from coffee, energy drinks, anything along those lines. Okay, then they're looking at when these sessions were held. Okay, so they're looking at the temperature outside and anything like that. So anything that's going to have a negative or positive impact on the actual scenario. Then we're looking at very specific aspects around how they're being done. What's their warm-up look like? How are they encouraged during a yo-yo test? They're doing a 1 repetition maximum hang clean, 1 repetition maximum bench press, and they're even gonna provide us with how they do that specific warm-up. So that's like another cool aspect here, is that when we're reading these papers, we can literally pull out progressions to test inside of our own gym to lead to a better max. So sometimes I think these papers have really good progressions to lead to a max test of a hang clean or of a bench press. Even in this case, like this is how they warmed up, you know, a 5-minute undirected warm up for the yo-yo test. And then they did a couple specific sprints before they actually went into the yo-yo. So even things along those lines are pretty unique and pretty interesting to break down. Now, the vertical jump, the way that they tested and analyzed the vertical jump here is that they looked at, they use an actual jump mat, okay? And the jump mat's gonna show us the flight time. They provide the specific type of jump mat there. And they're testing unilateral and bilateral squat jumps and counter movement jumps. Then when we get over into this aspect here, you know, just clarifying, a squat jump is starting from a semi-squatting position without any counter movement. So there's no movement down. You're just starting in that quarter squat position, and then you have to jump as high as possible. The counter movement is where we will see athlete move more similar to the way you would see a vertical jump test being done. Then we get into this yo-yo test, okay? So assessment of endurance capacity. Now, they're looking at these tests, and then they're gonna compare them to agility. And I'm gonna provide the definition that they use for agility, because I think that's going to be really important. I wanna look at the yo-yo test here first. Okay, so this test is a valid approach to estimate VO2 max, which is gonna be a pretty big role. And they even have the actual annotation there, right? And then they're gonna say, okay, players were required, okay, to complete 2 by 20-meter shuttles at a progressively increasing pace, controlled by audio signals. So they had 20-meter shuttles, and they had audio signals going back and forth with a 10-second period of jogging around a marker placed 5 meters behind the finish line. Okay, the test ended when the participant chose to terminate it. So basically when the athlete's like, I'm dying, or when the players could not complete the distance run on 2 consecutive occasions. So this shows a pretty good example of where VO2 max can be. And this is a common test. I feel like internationally, it's pretty common in the US with sports like soccer and lacrosse, but I don't think it's I think it's more common outside the US, to be totally honest. It is still used in the United States, but not as frequently as some other tests. Now, I wanna go into on the second day, so that's the first day. Then on the second day, they're looking at players running as fast as possible for 10 meters with a 180-degree change of direction. You know, in most people's mind, you run 5 meters, you turn 180 degrees, you run back 5 meters. So that's 10 total meters. It's a little confusing there, but if you read the first line, the 5+5 test was used to show this. This test was selected because it closely reproduces the basketball scenario. So that was the first test. The next one, this is where we can see these progressions, okay? So this is where they go into testing a 1 repetition maximum on the hang clean. They talk about the value of the hang clean, and then they even get into, on the value of the hang clean, it's significantly associated with change of direction, counter movement, and sprint performance in team sports athletes. They provide the annotation here. So if you guys want to go look at some of those other papers on why hang cleans transfer pretty well, that's going to help you understand why they're doing this stuff. And then we can actually go through this and start to see things. Now, I wanted to jump into, when I'm looking at this, if I go into discussion, okay, I want to jump right into agility. And when we get through agility, I'm going to come back to another point in this discussion, okay? So they actually end up saying in this study, our results showed a stronger association between vertical jump and change of direction performance compared to previous studies. We also detected the squat jump height was a significant determinant of change of direction. Now, what I wanted to share was their definition of agility. So if we go right here, it's a very complex term, okay, that represents an open skill, so an unpredicted skill, which rapid movements of the whole body with a change of direction are completed in response to an external stimulus. A ball goes this way, an opponent goes that way. You have to jump, land, change direction rapidly. It's perception and decision-making factors. And I think when we can identify a definition for such an abstract term, that helps us work towards the model. I did want to go back up because I found something very interesting that they mentioned here. It's sort of funny, actually. Our findings show that the performance of Uruguayan male professional players was lower than that presented in a recent systematic review, including older than 18 years basketball players. So what they saw with these guys that were playing for 12 plus years, basically they took the results of their tests and they compared them to other international teams, and the results of their tests compared to other international teams weren't great. And they basically just say this result may be evident from the differences in the FIBA ranking between Uruguay and all the other countries selected. So to be fair, they're basically saying Uruguay is not the greatest basketball team or country, but these conclusions are still going to provide a huge basis because they're very well-skilled players. Just across country, they might not be the greatest, okay? So now, in summary, the vertical jump performance, right here, the vertical jump performance and maximal strength relative to body mass were associated with change of direction performance, and vertical jump height was the main predictor, okay? So when we're looking at this, we have to understand the change of direction ability in the game of basketball is huge. If we can increase a basketball player's vertical jump height, and we know that vertical jump correlates to change of direction, as does maximal strength relative to body weight mass or body mass. So what does that mean? If we're taking athletes, okay, we have to get these individuals. So let's say we have an individual that weighs 180 to 200 pounds, somewhere in that range, okay? Or if we have a woman that weighs 160 to 180, right? If we can maintain their body weight, but increase their strength, now their maximal strength relative to body weight goes up. If their maximal strength relative to body weight increases and they're still playing consistent basketball, and if we can get their counter movement to increase, their squat jump to increase, their hang clean to increase with minimal gain in their body weight, or if as they're gaining weight, let's say they do get to 205 or 210, but their weights go off the chart, they start to increase as well, relative to that body mass increase, they're gonna have better change of direction and they're going to jump higher. Okay, so I think that this is a real key concept, that vertical jump and relative strength are strongly associated with change of direction, with agility, okay? And that's where we see this in the actual title of this paper. So understanding relative strength, understanding how to increase vertical jump. And what's interesting is inside of our strength training at Peak Strength, we establish benchmarks. We understand the model of specific sports. If we can take an elite model and work towards specific numbers for that model. And what's really cool is that can take a strength coach like Al Vermeil, who worked with the Chicago Bulls back when they won 6 world titles. Al could sit there and say BJ Armstrong could power clean 135 kilos. Now they're going from a hang in most cases, or they were going from boxes. And that's very similar to what this paper is showing us. So when we have the model of an athlete, and we can increase their strength, and we can increase their jumping capability, and we know what lifts and what activities increase their jumping ability and increase their relative strength, now we can develop that perfect model athlete. So oftentimes we don't have a model, we don't have those benchmarks, and we don't educate our athlete on where they can make improvements. So that's the big aspect around Peak Strength, is that we look at these specific numbers relative to the sports, and we know what numbers, what activities, what tests transfer well to the sport. And then we know how the athlete is doing based around their performance in the gym and where they might be lacking. So we can see that low-hanging fruit and make those improvements and really focus on that low-hanging fruit within each and every single program. So if you guys need help with having a better basketball-based program, head over to peakstrength.app, the Google Play Store or the Apple iOS Store. You can download Peak Strength, select basketball to increase your vertical jump, to increase your relative strength in comparison to your body mass. That's going to be some of the key factors for you to become a better basketball player. Because remember, freaks, if you want to get more agile, you've always got to train to become a champion. Peace.